This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Okay, we're going to call to order the meeting of the Southampton Select Board for May 6, 2025 at 6 p.m. At about 6:15 p.m. Here at Norris School Library, and let us stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So, let me just pull up my agenda again here. So, I think we are going to basically focus our discussion on the town meeting that's coming up at 7 o'clock, and we want to go through and look at a couple issues that have come up before the town meeting, and then kind of go through and do our usual who's going to read what article, where we're going to do that. So, new business. Scott, you've got anything here? Just the discussion preparation? Was that more just going through in terms of who's going to read what articles? Is that it? Okay. So, as usual, I guess I'll try to start off, if that's okay. Whoever's going to be sitting to my right, wherever we're going to be.
I'll be on the end.
You'll be on the end, okay. Between you two, fight. Who wants to sit next to me?
I'll sit next to you like I always do.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So Dan is 2, Stephen 3, John 4. So I'll be 5.
Well, do we want to just send the mic back up instead of going from end to end?
Well, we could do that too.
That's what we did last time.
That is true. We did that last time. Okay, we can do that. Sure.
Steve,
So you want to do 2 in a row, or do you want to just take, you've done 4, then pass 5, back to Stephen? Is that it?
Sure. Yep.
Stephen, Dan, Chris will be 7. Then we go Dan 8, Stephen 9, John 10, Stephen 11, Dan 12, yeah. Chris 13, Dan 14, Stephen 15, John 16, Stephen 17, 18 Dan, 19 Chris, 20 Dan, 21 Stephen, 22 John, 23 Stephen, 24 Dan, 25 Chris, 26 Dan, 27 Stephen, 28 John, 29 Stephen, and 30 Dan.
Are we doing CPAs?
Actually, yeah, there's good, no, we usually don't. I take that back.
28,
correct.
29.
So 28 and 29, actually, that will be a break because CPA people usually do their own.
So I think, Stephen, you're 27?
So Stephen's 27,
You
so
want me to
then,
just do 30 to end it?
sure, why not? We'll have CPA will do 28, thanks John, I forgot that. 28 and 29, and then John, go ahead and do 30, okay? Is that all right?
Yep.
Everybody kind of got that? We'll float as we go? All right, perfect. So that's a few things. So I think with that, we have a couple of adjustments to make. We've got a couple of typos, and then we've got a couple of other issues related to our free cash and our distribution. So if you would open these up, and I think, Scott, our first one is probably Article 6. Is there one? There's one, yeah. One tiny one, I don't know, it's just a correction, it's not part of the motion. Do you want to correct that? It's just a math error on article number 4. Just for our own, it's not part of the article at all. Under the
right.
transfer station, the total is not 211, 103, 72. It's actually 211, 239, 44. You need a pen.
Article 6.
Yeah. Anybody got an extra pen?
Article 6.
Sir.
Article 4.
Article 4, so it's just a total, that's okay. That was wrong, but that's just for our information. the motion itself does not have the number in it, so that's okay. So
Oh, okay.
211,
Okay.
239.44.
As long as
It
it's
doesn't have
something.
the actual money in it. However, let's jump over to Article 6. So first of all, Scott, you want to go through and explain maybe this page here on the free cash, and then I think we need to take a vote on your recommendations of how to divvy up this free cash.
So we did get free cash certified for last year. It came out to $642,670. That's in the neighborhood of what we were planning on getting. Unfortunately, there were some outstanding deductions that came through. The biggest of one is the special education for $95,000. This was a little bit frustrating because the school department worked really hard over the last couple months to get this in. This is an outstanding grant from before, and it comes from the state. And we did provide the DLS with actual documentation that the funds were coming, and they actually did come a couple of weeks ago. So we did receive the funds, but it was too late for our free cash certification. So even though we proved that we got the money, we did get the money, and the money came directly from the state, they didn't include that into our free cash.
But that 95 will now fall out. in
It'll
next
come
year's
back
free cash.
next time around.
Yeah.
The other big item was the water hazard mitigation. That popped up this, Bradley and I were doing some research on it. It is for a FY22, FY23 water main replacement that originally totaled a little over $450,000. We haven't talked to the Water Commission yet, but we're wondering how this kind of came onto our side.
Yeah, so this would be the water main, if you remember those that were around, we pulled the water main from the bottom of the river by the bridge by Sheldon's and put it to the bottom of the bridge. And so that's what this grant was for, and we got FEMA money for it, and I have a feeling FEMA only reimburses a percentage of that, and we may have overspent our percentage, I don't know, unclear. So we need to investigate that. So right now that's a question mark, but that may fall back too if we can clarify that, I think, yeah.
We have some minor things, and then the other big ones, other than a few $14,000 education grants, the Greenway acquisition and Mass Greenway acquisition in Conant Park, which we need to do a little bit more research on. I know that Mark Cassis has been very diligent in looking over the last 4 or 5 years of open space, and he was able to find some questions that we're going to try to work on, but that's going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah, and the Greenway acquisition came both from Mass Trails and CPC, I believe, so I'm not quite sure. I can't believe that we wouldn't have spent all of the Mass Trails money that we were allocated, so I'm not quite sure on that one, but we can dig into that. So those are ones that, or at least the bigger items. What's the top one, this receivable variance up top, another 14,000? Do you know what that was?
That's receivables between Bradley and I.
Okay,
So that's what we don't match.
okay.
So is this an entry just a zero amount, or have you guys exhausted all reconciliation possibilities and this zeros it?
I mean, I don't know if it should be exhausted, but there wasn't any more time. You know, so there's just certain numbers that we don't agree on.
Okay. So if I'm understanding then, if we can reconcile some of this, not for today, but if we could reconcile some of this and make it go away and convince the state that it should go away, right? Then that would fall into our free cash going forward next year.
Next year, but yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's a couple of these. I mean, the REAP grant and a couple of other early education sped things and so forth too. So some of these are grants that maybe weren't closed out or something. We need to figure that out. So then that gets us, they've subtracted all that out. Is that it? And then?
Next up, then we deduct the settlement with the schools for the central office costs. I understand that they met last night. They would prefer $200,000, but I think they understand the situation we are in now with free cash. So it looks like we're going to be able to come to an agreement over a 3-year period. Hopefully some of this funding that comes through into next year's free cash will be able to apply it to the total amount.
So just on that, the 2 chairs met again this morning, the Hampshire Regional Chair and the Norris Chair, and agreed on general terms to put forward. So 150 year 1, year 2, we paid the balance off if free cash is north of 600,000.
Okay.
If it's less than 600,000, then we only pay 2, and the remaining 100,000 falls out the next year, in year 3. So Dupree Law Firm is drafting that up, and then they'll have to circulate for approvals.
Okay. All right. And then the snow removal?
And then that's the snow removal for the deficit that Randall has for the snow removal from last year. So that leaves us with $220,000. Going by our standard policy, the 30% operation, 35% capital, 10% OPEB, it leaves us with about $36,000 from that.
Okay. So that would be changing on our articles here, but does anybody have any comments or your recommendations that we put in the required amounts per our policy, and that gets us much smaller amounts? But is everybody understanding what we're doing here?
Yeah.
Comments or questions?
So I'm fine with doing the 30, 35, 10, and I know we talked about the remaining 25% doing 12.5 to operation, 12.5 to capital, but doing that 43 will put operations over $1 million. And capital isn't quite at $500,000 yet. So I would say that I would advocate to move that 36 just to the capital, move the balance in the capital.
Into the capital fund?
Right. So operations would get to 43,566. Its current balance is 958,000 and change. So that would bump it over the $1 million mark.
Okay, so you're advocating to put the 36,305 and 15 cents into the capital stabilization, which would bring that up a bit higher then.
Right, it would add 86,000, and the current balance is 354.
Yeah,
So
that would give us a little bit more. Yeah, Scott, any comments about that? Does that make some sense?
No, I think capital's in desperate need of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that even putting that in after tonight's 369,000, if that's approved, wouldn't leave it. It's not going to leave us very much. So.
Okay, you want to make a motion to that effect, John?
I'll make a motion to allocate of the 145,220.61, 30% to operations, or $43,566.18, 10% to OPEB, $14,522.06, and then 60% to capital, which equals 87,132.36.
87,132.36.
Yep.
And that's for Article 7. Okay, I'll second that. Do we have any discussion on that?
This is the amount. This is the end of the amount.
What did you, John, or Steve?
So operation is operation stabilization fund, not the general budget.
Correct.
Right. Okay, if anybody's all okay with that? All right, then I'll take a vote. Let's have a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. So with that, let's turn into our warrant then and make those changes. So Article 5 is okay. That is the snow removal. That is the correct amount. Article 6, please cross off anything and put in the 43,566 and 18 cents. And that will be in the motion, so that needs to be read that way as the motion. Okay. Article 7, cross off the figures and put in 87,132 and 36 cents. And again, that will be read into the motion. OPEB fund, cross off and put in 14,522.06. Again, read into the motion. Okay. And then last one, as we're on this page, Article 9, the amount transferred to Hampshire Regional will not be 200,000, it will be 150,000 for this year. Right? Okay. All right. I think we had just one typo, right?
Article 16.
Did you catch all the numbers, Rob?
Yeah. Article 16. Yeah. Go ahead.
One sum didn't translate, so in the motion, third line in the middle, it says 98,000, that should be 190,000.
190.
Yep, 566.18.
I see. It's up in the top part in the summary, but it didn't come down into the bottom part, so change that 98,000 to 190,000. That's on Article 16. Typo. And one more on the assessors, was it? Is there another one besides that?
Yeah, it was 160.
190 on the Article 16.
Right.
Yeah.
Right there. Oh.
It's up in the top part, but it didn't come down correctly.
And on the Assessors Article 22, in the summary and the motion, after clause 41C, that should actually read clause 17D.
So this is page 25. Page 25. So the clause related to in MGL should not be 41C, it should be 17D. Apparently.
So chapter 59, section 5, clause
17D.
17E is David?
D is in David. 17D.
It's only once the motion.
It's in the motion, yeah,
One
once in the
article,
motion.
one motion, once in the
Correct,
motion.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think that's all that we know. Yeah. Any other news, Gene?
On the conservation bylaw, I do have the highlighted changes. If
Okay.
anyone wants to, I can give this
Yeah.
to them. So instead of reading the whole thing, they
Who's
can just skip
got
ahead.
that? Which one is that? Which number is that? Who took that? Where is it? 14?
Starts on page 14. And, oh, I'm sorry, page 15.
It's actually Stephen, number 21. But, but Stephen's going to read the motion on that. So depending, since I'm on the bylaws committee, unless Dan, you want to do it? From Concom? We're just going to point out where the changes are, because that's a long bylaw. This is, hold on, I just lost it.
Yeah, as long as I understand what I need to do.
Page 14, I believe.
14.
So,
In the alternative, we're reading the entire.
no.
No.
Oh, God, no. We're just reading the
Some
motion.
towns do.
I can't find the motion.
So
It's,
It's on page 15,
oh,
right at the top last paragraph, or first
Thank you,
paragraph.
thank you.
okay, right.
And is Dan going to swap in for me?
No, you're going to read the motion, but Dan will get up and speak to it from
Thank
Concom.
you.
Oh, fun.
Okay? Because
Unless
unless George is here, but I don't know. He may be
Yeah,
here.
he was at town hall a little while, so I think
Okay.
he's explaining
Okay,
it.
so we'll see who wants to step up. But
That's
just,
21 is the wetlands.
wetland is Article 21.
It starts on page 15.
It starts on page 15, and it's a long one. It goes for several pages. And we're definitely not reading the whole thing. And
Oh, there's
the motion is actually
Bottom of
on
page
page 24. 24, the bottom of 24 is where the motion is. Okay? You find that, Stephen, if you're reading that one?
I will.
Okay. And then, so Dan, just to point out, there's about 6 changes, I believe. So, and they're minor, sort of minor wording changes, but number 18, page 18, sorry. Okay, and you're looking for anything in bold. Page 18, so this is related to the quorum
Current
issue.
office?
Currently in office, so that's related to that quorum
Oh, yeah, so that's
issue.
So you're saying these are things you
We're
want to
just
highlight?
going to point out, I think, to people when Robert asked for somebody to speak to it, rather than going through, we're going to say that there are 6 wording changes here, and these are where they are. So on
Yep,
page
that's
18,
fair.
this is what that wording is. On page 19, there are 2. Up top, all RDA applications will be treated as public hearings. And then on B, about halfway down the middle, pre-construction site visit, applicant, representative, builder, and conservation agent and/or commission members. I mean, these are, minor, but that's what Concom asked us to do. Page 20, there's a strikeout. So there's just an end of a sentence that is completely deleted. provided that the work conforms to performance standards and design specifications.
So it's just clarification.
Right, I mean, that apparently the design standards hadn't been adopted by Concom, so George recommended that it get deleted. So that's a deletion, so we're just noting that that's language that's deleted.
Okay.
Okay. And on 21, just changing shall to may.
Oh, there it is. Yep.
Shall to may, that just makes it a little bit looser to
Yeah, so legal.
administer. And then the last thing is on the next page on 21, the inclusion of a wildlife habitat study paragraph.
22?
Page 22. And those are the,
Oh, this one right here. There it
yeah,
is.
so anything in bold. So those are the bolds are the main changes. So these are requests from Concom basically to, well, the quorum is obviously given, you know, these issues in terms of
Yeah.
having enough people
Yeah.
for meetings to vote on things. And then these are just other minor language changes that seem to make more sense to administer the bylaw from what I gather for Concom. Okay. I think that's all we have for changes on that. So we've got a few challenges here, but I think that's it. Anything else on the warrant? Anybody? Okay, yeah, Robert, sorry.
Robert Floyd, College Highway, Town Moderator. Just to keep you all informed, I spoke to Scott and met with Chris earlier. The moderator is going to change how we read the budget. Rather than what we've done historically for the last 15 plus years, I'm going to read each of the 29 items, one at a time. If and when I hear a hold, we'll have a discussion immediately on that one item. And when the discussion is ended, we'll go to the next item, and I'll keep reading all the way down. When I get down to 29, we'll vote on the entire budget. One vote.
So you're not going to do the categories like
No.
this, like you usually did?
I'm glad we did it, and people have it, it's information. A lot of towns do what I just expressed, and we have to do it eventually, so rather than wait till next year, I felt we'll do it now.
So could I just, so I understand in my mind, right?
Yeah.
Chris will read the motion, or the article as it's in there now, and then we're gonna go A and B? All the way
No. There's two motions together.
Yep.
There's two moves. We're going to read one motion and only about the budget, and only talk about the budget, and I'll go through each item, and then that will bring in discussion. You know, Scott will talk about the budget up front. And then when we vote on the budget, then a motion will be read about the override and seconded, and then we'll have the discussion and then the vote on the override separately.
Okay.
Okay. So in other words, reading the motion, because this was a long paragraph, it kind of combined two actions,
There's
right?
two moves, which are two primary motions, and you really can't have two primary motions on the floor at the same time.
Okay.
So technically, we need to do this anyway.
Okay. So in other words, I'm understanding that I'm going to stop the first read after,
No, you read the whole motion.
I'm going to stop after transferred from ambulance stabilization.
Correct.
That takes care of the base budget.
Correct.
We go through that, and then I come back to move further to raise and appropriate.
Once we voted
additional
on,
sum.
once we voted on
Okay,
the
so we're
budget.
gonna, so,
I'm just going to divide this paragraph.
and you'll stop, and then those of us.
I'm going to
that
stop,
are-
we'll discuss.
Those of us
pay.
that are against that should line up at the mark.
And that's a win-win for everyone, I think.
Yeah, so we'll stop right after ambulance stabilization, discuss
Yes.
that budget.
And what happens if the first budget gets voted down?
Then we have nothing to base it on.
Okay. And we move, but then we still move to the override,
Yes.
But the
and then we
override-
figure out what to do with the base.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I would hope that the base could pass. I mean, even those that want the
I
override.
suspect that there will be a outcry to kill the 4.05 at Norris to stop that from happening in the event that the override doesn't get to the ballot.
The moderator won't allow any severe changes to the budget. 10% increase, 10% decrease.
But they could vote down the line item
Yeah.
when schools come up.
Yeah, because the people aren't, reasonable people think this won't happen, they stay home, that type of thing. So tweaks to a budget is allowable,
Yeah.
but severe changes aren't,
Right. But one would hope that,
by tradition.
right. But in terms of voting for the different lines and voting for Norris in the base budget, if if you're voting for that, but it doesn't stop you from coming back and also voting for the override in B, right?
Right, because we're doing one vote on the whole budget, not individual votes like we historically did for the 9 categories. Now we have 29 categories. It would take too long to do a vote on each one.
Right.
So I'm going to read each of the
You're just gonna
29
read them.
down. It's faster. It can be faster the first time there's a transition, an introductory. It may be a little confusion, but I'll walk everybody through it. We'll get there.
Okay, I'll follow your lead.
I think what happened is my understanding of DOR, if it ends up being just a school that fails, the commissioner of schools, or the commissioner of education, will tell us what our budget's going to be. Which can be anything the commissioner deems it to be. So, which is fine. I mean, it's a, let the people speak.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll follow your lead here, Robert. All right, anybody have any other questions about the warrant? If not, I think we've got that squared away. Let me just check one more thing here. There was going to be a possible PCF for the Board of Health. They've interviewed an agent candidate, but that hasn't gone through all the required procedures yet in the PQB and so forth. So we're not going to handle that tonight on the Board of Health agent that they have in mind. So other than that, we have our select board meeting next week on the 13th and then on the 27th. And obviously we've got the town election on May 20th. So with that, I don't think there's any other commentary that I'm aware of, but if anybody has anything.
Motion to adjourn?
I think motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all right, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are adjourned at 6:40.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.